All right, sit by. Well, our storm system and cold front have now moved away, and it has set us up for the rest of the week to be on the quiet side and probably into, possibly through the weekend. We'll see. Uh, there's another storm that's going to be coming out of the Gulf of Mexico and probably going to cross Florida and park itself somewhere off the southeast coast over the weekend. And will it bother us? I don't know, but we'll attempt to figure this out. We're very good puzzle solvers here. On tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow, get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can be part of the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. Plenty of time still to get a Christmas gift for the weather enthusiast in your life. The link is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video, and if you use the coupon code I want a weather station, which you desperately do, you will get.
Is it my turn now?
Yeah.
10%. Yes. I want a weather station. Use that code and you will get 10% off anything, not just the weather station, but anything that is sold by Tempest. Quite a deal. I'd take advantage of it. Maybe you should too.
Okay. Well, Plaza 5 9099 or Murray Hill 5, what was the phone number for that mattress company that used to advertise all the time when we were kids? Do you remember?
The mattress company?
Yeah, there was a mattress company that used to advertise, and they had a phone number.
Well, I hope that they would have a phone.
Right, and then they always would end the commercial. It would say, "Out of town, please call collect."
Yeah, in town, call direct. Out of town, lots
Call,
of luck.
exactly. All right, so this particular storm and cold front, I think I would say based on the rainfall amounts that uh, it was either in line in terms of what fell or in not not just a few cases, particularly for Long Island and southern New England, this really did outperform from the standpoint of rain. There were some 5 and almost 6 inch amounts over parts of Long Island that I saw, and 4 inch plus amounts in parts of eastern Connecticut and points east and north. The wind was probably a little bit disappointing in the sense, when I say disappointing, I mean in terms of the forecast. There were 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts at some stations across Long Island, but you had to really be right on the coast to experience that. I think most of the wind was, a bit more subdued. I mean, not that they weren't gusty; they just were a little more subdued.
I'm just happy that it did not, at least up here in my neck of the woods, here in Putnam Valley, I think we picked up about 1.6 or 1.7 inches. I'm not exactly sure because this rain went across midnight into the new day of Monday. And so I wasn't around, let's say, a half an hour before midnight to see what the amount was, or even just before midnight to tack on the 0.59 inches that fell after midnight. But in any case, it does not look like, for me, it turned out to be, and usually, I mean, all summer, it seemed like I was at the epicenter of all the heaviest rains and downpours. This time around, I'm sharing the love with Long Island and parts of Connecticut where they picked up, in some cases, in excess of 4, even 5 inches of rain. And the winds, they weren't all that bad either. We did get some gusty winds out there today, Joe, as anticipated from the northwest. I got to tell you something, though. It felt really cold out there because of the combination of the lower temperatures and those winds. It was tough to be outside for very long, but in any case, we made it through this latest atmospheric atrocity, and as you just alluded to at the start, it does not look like our next weather headache is coming until maybe about 6 days from now. We'll see.
If it comes 6 days from now, because I'm not entirely sold on the idea that this thing is going to come up the coast. I think it might wind up getting squashed offshore. Judging from what I was looking today, there's a northern shortwave that has to get involved and sort of semi-phase with it. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, maybe, maybe not. I will say that we're going to get a glancing blow from a really frigid air mass on Thursday that's going to be moving across eastern Canada, and the bottom end of that cold air may make it all the way down into our neck of the woods here in the tri-state area. But you have to go up north to really get into the thick of things in terms of rigidity for very cold air. That's only around for a day, and then boom, the temperatures jump right back up to near 50 when we get to Friday and on into the upcoming weekend.
Right. Well, some people got snow, but you had to have elevation to get it, for the most part. And Chuck Cardillo, who has elevation, picked up 6 lovely inches on the of the white stuff. So he's got a winter wonderland up there in the Catskills. That's uh, Mrs. Cardillo sent me some pictures that were taken today, and you can see how lovely. I mean, it does look like he's got 6 inches there on the fence post. So he did. You did pretty well there, Chuck. You did pretty well.
And they also got about 5.1 inches, I think, up at High Point in New Jersey. They are at 1,800 feet above sea level in the northwest corner of New Jersey in Sussex County. So, again, elevation snow. I suppose maybe 1 inch for every 1,000 feet. Let's say. So, if you were up at elevations over 1,000 feet, you probably did get a little touch of light snow. And if you were where Chuck was, or if you were up in the northwest corner of New Jersey, you picked up quite a bit more.
Yeah, I didn't see any big amounts in upstate New York. Those amounts seemed to have come in on the low side, and there were some areas in the Poconos too that got a few inches, but it wasn't a lot. Uh, I think from the standpoint of snow, I would probably rate that as an underperform
Well,
against what was
some people,
predicted.
some people at least got snow. I mean, I did not see any snow. Um, all I had here at worst was a cold rain after midnight last night.
Yeah, a few places in New Jersey. I know the chairman Scott Briller said in Manalapan he had some snowflakes in there, and I did see Atlantic City and I think Millville were reporting mixed precip for a couple hours. I got to be careful with that because you don't know if that was an automated station, automated reporting, or if it was an actual observer that reported it. Because sometimes the automated stations throw out mixed precip when it's not really mixed precip. But no matter, it wasn't. It's not worth spending a whole lot of time on.
Well, whatever. It was here. It's gone, and now it looks like Joe very quiet weather for the next 4, 5, 6 days.
Yep. Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. And for those of you who are lurking in the background, welcome also to you. We only need a handful more subscribers to get to 14,000. So if you like what you see, subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you won't miss the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is on Sunday through Thursdays at 7:35 and the occasional Friday and or Saturday. If there's a big storm brewing, we will add extra shows for those 2 days because otherwise Joe and I need to take a breather. It's a lot of pressure doing this show. Uh,
Somebody on the chat board had pointed out or mentioned that they felt that High Point, New Jersey, was at an elevation of 1,700 feet. I just looked it up here. Located in the portion of the state known as the Skylands, it is the highest elevation in the state of New Jersey with a peak elevation of 1,803 feet. And I have been up there. I have been on a couple of occasions to High Point State Park, which is pretty much right where the three states meet: New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. And I believe that obelisk, which kind of resembles the Washington Monument or the water tower at Jones Beach, the obelisk is known as the monument honoring war veterans. Master Mason Michael Modoluna began construction of the 220-foot, 67-meter tower, which has a base which is 34-foot square, back in 1928, and it was completed in 1930. So if you've never been up to the northwest part of New Jersey and High Point State Park, I strongly recommend it. It's a very lovely part of the Northeast to visit. you walk around, you say to yourself, "This is New Jersey," but it is. It's nice. And
Oh,
again, that
Northwest New Jersey is quite nice. It was actually a lot nicer about 20 years ago when there were fewer people there. I
and
hate to
also
say.
there used to be. I'm not sure if they're still there. I mean, I stayed. There were a couple of times I stayed in at the High Point area. There was kind of a mansion that was there, but I think I may be wrong, but I think the mansion has been since um, razed or knocked down, so it doesn't exist. So you can't stay up there. I mean, you can go visit, but you can't stay up at High Point anymore.
Gotcha. 53 likes so far. Thank you for those of you who hit the like button. And if you like the show, hit the like button because Joe and I love, love, love it when we go over 100 likes. And Chuck Cardillo bangs the tip jar. Thank you for hitting Super Chat, Chuck. And it's just, always a thank you for taking those pictures. You make us all jealous. We had uh, it never changed over to anything here in the highest elevations, but above 4,000 feet here had rain with temperatures in the upper 20s last night for a few hours. So much of the mountaintops here are all glistening. It's actually quite pretty, all glistening from the ice that froze. And right now, temperature-wise, I am down to 28 here at Cook Mountain in North Georgia. And in the meantime, on our satellite loop, not a whole lot going on. You see the bright white clouds offshore, the cold front and storm system moving away. The low is up somewhere north of Nova Scotia and continuing its progress eastward. And we're seeing clouds now streaming into the Gulf of Mexico. Over the next couple of days, we're going to start to see moisture build up there, which is going to set up this developing low for later this week. We've got some moisture coming into the west and also into the southwest. It's nothing really to write home about because when we check out the radar tonight, there isn't a whole lot happening. There's some light snow showers up along I-81 in upstate New York. A little bit of lake effect going on there. Also up in parts of northern Vermont and on the Canada side. And actually for the rest of the country, it's a snooze fest. There's a little bit of snow up in north central Colorado up I-25 and on the Wyoming side as well. And also a little snow straddling the border of Idaho, Nevada, and Utah. And a little bit of snow just clipping the northeastern corner of Minnesota around Duluth. And, that's moving into Lake Superior. So that's really it. It's a fairly quiet scenario on the radar. Rainfall amounts over the next 7 days. So you can see what WPC, at least for now, is thinking. And this goes to Monday night. So you'll notice that they painted a stripe of a half an inch of liquid from coastal Maine and also over Rhode Island, eastern half of Connecticut, and the eastern half of Long Island, with a quarter of an inch back to about New York City. So getting the feel from the map says that WPC is thinking that, well, maybe it comes close enough to clip, but not close enough to be another big rainstorm, and that all the heavier moisture is out further offshore. Florida will do well with this, particularly the east coast of Florida, with winds coming in from the east. So they're showing 3 to 5, as much as 5 inches in southeast Florida in that orange area, and then also some of that skimming the coastal parts of the Florida Panhandle and just touching southeasternmost Louisiana, and then you got moisture that goes all the way back up into northwest Texas on the order of several inches or more. Not a whole lot in the west, not a whole lot really anywhere else around the U.S. And we'll set the snow map up. And Joe, Helen Bertona hitting super chat. Thank you, Helen, for hitting the tip jar. She says, not as rainy as she expected. More concerned with the winds. Yeah, I guess, there was a fairly large area of geography that got between an inch and a half and two across New Jersey and then up into the Hudson Valley. But if you were east of that, uh, east of that is where they got clobbered because they got uh, 2 rounds of very heavy rain as opposed to maybe just one. So here's the probability for at least 2 in the next 72 hours. And it's for our friends in Well, no, you know what? Let me refresh here because this is from 12. This is from 7 a.m. this morning. So let me refresh for something new and get an updated forecast from WPC. All right, this is a little better. So let's put the state boundaries on and get ourselves a little bit closer. So you got a couple of patches here. East shores of Lake Ontario. There's the area there north of Syracuse where we've got a 80% probability for at least a couple. Up in northern Vermont, a 50% chance for at least a couple. Higher probabilities are all in southeastern Canada, north of Toronto, north of Hamilton, north of Ottawa, and north of Montreal. So even there, Joe, even in those cities, you got to think about weather going on more north and west than any place else. And out in the west, not much. This is the next 3 days, nothing on the west coast, and just a couple of small low probability areas in northern New Mexico and a few places dotting central Colorado. When you said quiet, you meant quiet, did you not?
Yes, indeed, very tranquil. And I find that interesting that that one little area in northern New Mexico and portions of southern Colorado that may pick up a very localized area, I might add, maybe a couple of 4 inches in parts of that area. But again, much of the central and western states, again, not much happening. And here in the east, any kind of significant snowfall basically is going to be due in part to the gusty winds interacting with the Great Lakes.
Well, I got the new GFS surface, so you can take a look. Old cold fronts offshore. We've got a high, some colder air. Let's call it dirty cold air because it's not really truly Arctic air. Just cold enough to keep temperatures about where they should be for this time of year. There's a secondary front back in western uh, Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, crossing into Nebraska with the high that's coming down out of Canada there in Montana. So that's going to be moving into the east, but it's not going to have a whole lot with it. We move it along. You can kind of see that most of the snow with that is on the Canada side of the New York, Vermont, New Hampshire main line. And now we're into Wednesday morning, so we'll get a little reinforcement here. As Joe pointed out, it's you know, very cold air that's moving through eastern Canada, but only a little bit winds up bleeding down into the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states for Wednesday night and Thursday. Probably Thursday, I think, would be the coldest day, with maybe temperatures are topping out upper 30s to low 40s, which is not exactly uh, overly cold. And you've got east winds in the from the southwest Atlantic across the Gulf of Mexico and lower than normal pressures. So that's going to cause a low to form here. And on this latest run, taking it over Florida. And actually, Joe, the gradient gets pretty tight off the southeast coast. Probably going to have gale warnings down off the southeast coast this weekend with this. The rain gets almost to me, gets just about to me with it. And then the low, the problem here, folks, is I'm just going to show you. Well, there's a couple of things I just want to note on the surface here. So, it takes the low and moves it mostly northeast. It keeps the vast majority of it offshore. And you'll notice there's another cold high that's coming down into eastern Canada and into the northeast, which basically acts as a suppressor of this system and pushing it to the southeast. And the reason why it suppresses, and this is something that the European has been showing the last few runs, the GFS has been trying to phase. If you look at this upper air, you've got this wrapped up cutoff down here, and then you've got this short wave that's way up here. And while earlier runs were trying to show this phasing, this doesn't look like much of a phase to me.
It looks like it's going to just roll out underneath us. I mean, it looks like it's a closed low that's going to move on out, open up a little bit as it moves offshore, and may not. You're absolutely right, Joe. It may not lay a glove on us
No.
if you're looking for any kind of precipitation. And what does that mean? That means that if we don't get any rain out of this or any precipitation out of this, And we're looking ahead, folks, to the end of this upcoming weekend.
Ridge position.
It may very well be that we could stay dry with hardly any precipitation to speak of at all, maybe right on until we're within striking distance of Christmas.
I totally agree. Now, I want to point out that this is where if you had a pattern that you could have even the slightest bit of confidence happen of this happening, when you have a northern shortwave like this, okay, and if you've got a system that's like this, the southern part, clearly there's two jets here that are in play. All right. Now, if you were to get this northern shortwave to come down and do some sort of a phase, I mean, really dig down and do some sort of a phase where you take a coastal low, up northeast up the coast, you actually could make a case for some cold air to get involved with this and make it a fairly interesting setup. But the problem is that it seems almost implausible to me that we're going to see this thing phase in such a way that we're going to get any never mind even just talking about snow chances. I was just kind of, if we were already having, if we were in a more favorable pattern, we might have a might be a more valid conversation with regards to it. But I'm just going to pull up the European upper air for the same time frames from the earlier run today, and you'll notice on this one, as we go, I'll go and take it forward. There's your shortwave for Wednesday, and now of course you've got the southern stream system there in Texas. That's going to it takes forever. That's the other thing with the European. It takes so long for this to move along. That see now it's over Florida, and then you've got this thing digging into the western lakes, and it sort of phases, but it phases when it's right on top of us. But when I saw that today, I thought, you know what, if this were a bit more of a colder pattern or across North America, you might have it might get exciting. I don't think it will get exciting, and the outcome of this was, by the way, that the European has like a monster storm that it forms off the southeast coast. I mean, a really wrapped up animal there. I can't even see what it was, a 980 something, 984, and runs it out to the east northeast, which sort of makes sense for where the trough is on the European. So anyway, uh, people, you can sort of hope and dream on these sorts of things. But I just don't think, Joe, this is the kind of thing I would lay money on for something to phase. And become a problem. So I'm gonna lean to the idea that there's probably a higher probability that we will be dry this week and next week before rather than take the bet that this would come up the coast.
Well, Judah Cohen, in his latest tweet, says that we're now approaching one of the most critical periods for the winter of 2024, with the potential for a large polar vortex disruption. Anybody say split? He asks. But first live by the split. But first live by the stretched polar vortex. Die by the stretched polar vortex. So,
I'm going to tell you something. I said this last night. And I started this this tirade last Thursday about this pattern flip, pattern change or pattern flip, and Fyodor Lukovsky, I think, fled weather, sent the European weeklies, and the first frame. Well, I'm going to let it go out to 1,000 hours. Okay, so I'm going to just say this. All right, now this is 360 on the first frame, where you see that deep trough from Alaska and the Aleutians into the west coast, which the European, as we move through the first part of January, now we're talking the first part of January, gets rid of it and replaces it with higher pressures up in the Pacific Northwest and in the Northeast Pacific, and lots of troughing in the eastern part of the United States. So let's push it back now another week. Okay, I'm Joe. I'm telling you, from every day that I look at this, I'm thinking, if you want to be optimistic, for a pattern change, look toward January 7th, the way this is going. I find it really disturbing watching these runs. And the trick is you got to get rid of this trough that's from Alaska down to the off the west coast. That's no good. And when you look at the upper air, and I looked at it today on every model, well, the European only goes out to 240, but looking at this, it's like as soon as it seems to want to go away, which is what you see here next Tuesday, for example. Okay, the trough in the west is starting to move away, and I'll even back it up a bit. Let's just back it up a couple of days. So the trough does go away late this week and into this weekend, and then it comes right back. So it forces ridging here in the east and also up into Canada. I mean, this is just not good. You're getting these one after another. This is what it looked like last year for a while, where you had trough after trough come into Alaska or over the Aleutians and then go westward into the west coast. I mean, there's one, there's two, here comes another one, here's 3, 4, and 5, and here we are now. This is December 27th. I mean, this is horrible. From a winter standpoint, the only thing I will tell you is, there's room. There are troughs that come in the east, but there's not a whole lot of cold air in a setup like this.
This is what I would call a Columbo pattern. You want to know why I'm calling this the Columbo pattern? If you were a fan of the TV show Columbo, the final 15 or 20 minutes of the show, when he was closing in on the guy who he felt was the guilty party, he would say goodbye to that person. He'd say, "Well, thank you very much, Mr. Smith. It's been a pleasure knowing you." And he leaves. But then 2 minutes later, the door knocks, and Columbo comes back in. "Can I have one more question?" And he'd ask the question, and he said, "All right, well, thank you very much." And he'd leave. And then 2 minutes later, he'd come back. And this is what this reminds us. That's why I'm calling this the Columbo pattern. There's the trough. The trough goes away. You say, "Okay, now we're going to start to roll." Then all of a sudden, the trough comes back, just like Columbo.
Yeah.
And after a while, it goes away, and you say, "Okay, now we're ready," and then it comes back again. And I'm beginning to wonder, Joe, if you're right, that this may be a pattern that we're going to see through much of the upcoming winter. And finally, when everything falls into place and everything is great and everything looks good for a winter type pattern, it'll be April 15th.
Keith James, thanks for hitting the tip jar tonight. And Keith says the trend is your friend, and that is true. That is something that I live by. The trend is your friend. With the last few winters being warm, why wouldn't it continue this year? Well, I'll tell you something on that end, Keith. 96, 97, 97, 98, 98, 99, 99, 2000. 4 years in a row. 4. Okay? It can happen. All right? And has happened. And you go back to the 70s and 80s, you're going to find streaks like that. I'm trying to remember. I think from 83 to 94, as far as snowfall was concerned, at least as far as New York City was concerned, that was 11 years of below normal snowfalls in a row. That was finally broken in 93, 94. So, I mean, there's nothing new here as far as us going into all of this. This is, what's frustrating about it is the fact that, I guess it's because of the passion for snow lovers, and I'm like that. I like to see it, but you get frustrated because, and especially those of you who really kind of came into their own in weather during the 2000 to 2020 period. You folks were completely spoiled because you saw a period, and I mean, I saw it too. Joe saw it too. That was a 20-year period like no other 20-year period. So, maybe maybe that cycle pattern is broken now, and we're going back to the cycle of 1970 to 2000. Heaven forbid for snow lovers.
Well, I want to just say on the chat board, somebody by the name of Phone King 1. And he says, "This is
Phone King, yes. I hope you got my message, Phone King 1. Joe, Phone King 1, I told you about yesterday.
All right. Well, Phone King 1 says, "This is all Lee Goldenberg's fault." At Channel 7, he called for a colder, snowier winter, totally jinxed us. The man needs to be canned immediately. Now let me just say this about, first of all, it's not Lee Goldenberg, it's Lee
He
Goldberg.
knows. Be nice, Joe. He's on our side.
Number two, Lee Goldberg, I think of all of the weathercasters on television here in the tri-state area, is probably near the top. He is about as good a synoptician, about as good a person to discuss the weather. Last night, they even I did a double take, Joe. They put him on the ABC network news last night. They had him stationed near the Tappan. Oh, excuse me, the Mario Cuomo Bridge.
We
Can't believe
didn't have the Mario Cuomo
it.
bridge.
No, that's his son. That was Andrew
Oh,
Cuomo, not.
okay. I'm sorry. Wrong Cuomo.
But anyway, I don't, and he's saying this is Lee Goldberg's fault. Well, he called
Oh,
for a
I think he's
stormy
just
winter.
being facetious when he says that. But I think
Totally jinxed us. I mean, Joe. All right, how many days? We're 11 days into meteorological winter. We're not even into astronomical winter yet, and already people are throwing in. I posted on my Facebook page today, by the way, the the 8 to 14 day outlook from CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, which showed our area, practically the whole country, is in above normal, and everybody is saying the same thing. Well, I really don't like this. I thought it was going to be a cold winter, and I'm saying it isn't a winter forecast. It's an 8 to 14 day forecast. It takes us up to
no.
Christmas.
Well,
Since when did the wintertime end on Christmas Day? They're
people.
overlooking the fact that we're going to have the whole month of January, February. Don't forget March, which can be a crazy month. People, I can't believe how many people have already thrown in the towel. They said, this is it.
Oh, you should.
Over.
Well, listen. You should stay off of Twitter then, because the towel throwing began like last week, and it just continues to be thrown.
Yeah.
They went into the linen closet and basically emptied it out. But I will say this. I will say this just in general, and I will again point that I did mention this before, so this is nothing new. But one of the things that has made me really uncomfortable about this forecast for this, bonanza winter in the eastern part of the United States, and so on, is the fact that so many people are on that page, and I am not comfortable. I am not comfortable being part of the crowd. So the fact that so many people are on that page to me is a you know nature has a way of embarrassing as many people as they possibly can. Okay, and the pain trade here is to go in the other direction and to say that this is not going to be a gangbusters winter by any means. And the other thing is, and I think also to be fair, what's really unusual here is the whole country's this way. The whole country is this way. It's not like they're getting snowstorm after snowstorm in the west. They're not.
Right.
It's not like they're getting snowstorm after snowstorm in the plains or in the Great Lakes or in except for Maine, uh, much of New England, where you're seeing storms that are cutting just to our west or whatever they're doing. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So this is a there's I mean, just as an example, from the standpoint of being everywhere, I was looking at. I'm going to just bring up a map. Okay, I'm going to just take the surface map, and I'm going to put the. I
And
just put.
if you can give me sharing capabilities, because Scott Briller, who has just hit the tip jar, is asking if I could show the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook that now covers Christmas. Snow weenies are heading up the cliff.
Yeah. Sure. Give me one second. I'm just. This is the 210-hour GFS forecast for next Wednesday. Okay. The 540 thickness, which is the dashed blue thickness line that forecasters look at to see if there's precipitation, where the rain snow line is. And I look at this, it's all so far north. I mean, it kind of takes a dip about in the west, but look how far north it is. I drew a red line, so I know you're probably a 20 or 30 seconds behind. I mean,
I'm seeing.
there's no cold air. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Even in Canada, it's a 534 thickness north of Lake Winnipeg. That is not cold air. Okay? It's not. 504 thickness, then you could have a party. It ain't there. So until we see a wholesale change, and I'm becoming less and less confident of that happening anytime soon. Um, and maybe not happening until after we get out of December and get into January. And even there, I'm starting to have my doubts. I know everybody. I know you're going to say, well, the European weeklies. Okay, well, we've been on that train now for the better part of 2 weeks, still waiting. Okay, we're almost into mid-December. We had indications that this is when it was supposed to do it, not happening. So now we've pushed it back toward the end of the month. It's frustrating. It's just frustrating. But anyway, I'm sorry. I digress.
I was listening a couple of weeks ago to an old interview. I talk about old. Goes back to the early '60s. The late great Frank McGee at NBC interviewing the even later and greater newscaster H.V. Keltenborn. H.V. Keltenborn was like a living legend in the 50s and 40s and 30s and even the 60s in terms of news. And Frank McGee was saying, what was it like when you were a young person growing up? And he grew up in Milwaukee, H.V. Keltenborn, and he said that the thing that he looked forward to the most, he was compared to the kids of then, back in the 60s, and even especially today now. If you don't get an iPhone or an iPad for an 8-year-old, they throw a hissy fit. And H.V. Keltenborn said that when he was like 4, 5, 6 years old, he looked forward to a pair of skates or a sled, because the winters in Milwaukee, he pointed out, especially right around Christmas, were always severe. And take that into the effect of the severe cold, snowy conditions. And I mentioned yesterday, Joe, that this year it may very well be that Milwaukee and Minneapolis, places in the northern plains and the western Great Lakes, may not have a white Christmas, which is very, very unusual because, as you just pointed out, it's warm everywhere.
Yep.
Across from one part of the country to the other. It's really amazing. But I also point out, and we mentioned this last night, that in 2015, the temperature was in the upper 60s and low 70s on Christmas Day in 2015. And everybody was saying, that's it. They throw in the towel. It's all over. No winter. We're not going to see any snow. And less than a month later, the biggest snowfall in one singular storm in New York City weather history, 27.5 inches. What happened? I thought that we weren't going to see any snow that winter because it was so warm at Christmas time.
I get it. Windows open up, and even in the worst patterns, except for last year.
And meanwhile, in 1980, we also mentioned the fact that it was the coldest Christmas on record, with sub-zero temperatures even in New York City. Cold, frigid Christmas Day. And you say, oh, my goodness, it's so frigid out there now. Just wait until we get into the heart of the winter. It's going to really be cold, and we're going to get a lot of snow. And as it turned out, the winter of 1980-81, we did see some snow, but it really wasn't a gangbusters year as was be suggested by the frigid temperatures of the day. So it can go either way. And again, we're going to have personally, everybody does their shopping now online. But back in the day, they used to go to the malls, which are now closing left and right because nobody is going there anymore. But if you do go shopping in the next couple of weeks, go outside, you're no problem. It looks like you're going to have mild temperatures for mid to late December. You're not going to see much in the way of storminess, no precipitation. So you should be gratified. And then after the holidays, the winter holidays are over, maybe we'll flip back to a more wintry type of weather. It is frigid over Europe, parts of Europe, and especially Asia. I mean, it is very, very cold. And maybe this will be the year that some of that frigidity goes over the top of the North Pole and invades parts of North America. Maybe not necessarily in December, but January or February, whatever. So for all of you who are just like throwing in the towel already, don't throw it in so soon, because it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to have a winter because it's going to be no. Don't give me that.
All right.
At this time, it's malarkey. I refuse to believe that.
You can share, by the way.
Oh, thank you. So now I'm going to, with this upcoming map that I'm about to share with all of you, I'm going to break all of your hearts.
Well, only for 14 days you're going to break
only
their
for 14 days. All right. Let's go to the Climate Prediction Center And I posted this also on my Facebook page, and this started a whole wail of, oh my God, no, it's global warming and winter's, we're never going to see winter again. So here's the 14-day outlook, valid from the 19th to the 25th. 25th, of course, is Christmas time. So this is the week leading up to Christmas, folks. Look at this. Look at this. From coast to coast, the probability is for above normal temperatures. I especially so look at this out here. This is the area covering portions of the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. I mean, this region is what H.B. Keltenborn was referring to when he said, well, on Christmas time, we have rather severe cold winters. This ain't going to be a severe winter, or at least it's not going to be a severe spell of cold weather at Christmas time. And in fact, it's for this that I'm saying that maybe this part of the country may not even see any white Christmas this year, which is very, very unusual. But I mean, this is amazing, Joe. This pattern has us in the tri-state area in likely above 50 to 60% probability of above normal temperatures. I know it doesn't sound a lot, 50 to 60%, but still, if it does verify, that means that temperatures on average in this period, 19th to the 25th of December, will be in the 40s to around 50. And the precipitation outlook, if you're hoping for some kind of a storm, although I don't know why you would if the temperatures are going to be so warm, but look at this. Below normal across the northern plains.
I agree. I believe it.
It's incredible, but there you are.
And just to really make it, since you're in a heartbreaking mood, I might as well add to it. I'm just looking at the last night's 0Z ensemble, which is now going into this, let's call it the super long range. And I've got the first date here at December 19th, and the map that's up, temperatures above normal, coast to coast, except for Florida, okay? Except for Florida, which is below normal. And I'm running it through the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 23rd, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then taking it all the way to the end of the year. Now it's December 31st, and you're starting to get some below normal temperatures in the southern tier, but just about everybody north of 35 degrees north is still above normal temperature-wise. So, and look at the anomalies if you go further north around Hudson Bay. I mean, we're talking about 15 or more degrees above normal up here. No. So each day that goes by, I grow less and less bullish about anything of consequence happening anytime in the next several weeks. Let's put it that way.
And you know what? The people who go to Mexico for the winter holidays, people who might have, let's say, a little casita that they rent out in late December or whatever, people down there probably, the locals are probably saying, caramba, is it never this cool? It's so chilly down here this time of the year, senor, senorita, whatever. So they're probably going to be complaining at the end of the year about how unseasonably chilly or cool it is down in Mexico. And meanwhile, the folks up in Canada are saying, they're mopping their brow, saying like, oh my God, look how warm it is. It's crazy. The whole pattern is totally upside down, totally and completely upside down.
Right. By the way, we have we have a new person on the chat board, Joe. Gas Bags 101. Oh, I love it. I love it. Phone King, I love it. Gas Bags 101, I love it. It's brilliant. Brilliant. You should only know the backstory. One day, if there's a wake, I will share it. And Joe, you will be, in which case you will be assigned, as you assigned someone, I'm going to assign you to do the Mrs. Quinn check.
We hit 100, Joe.
Glory.
We went over 200 last night. We got 100 here. Gas Bags 101. Thank you for the warm welcome.
And for me, the big And for both of us, the good laugh. Cecilia Hernandez wants to know who is this gas bag that we're referring to. That shall remain a secret until such time, and there will be a time where the revelation of whom we are referring to shall be revealed. And this is more me than Joe. Okay, this
You
is
know,
this is actually quite personal with me. So
if he wanted to get us, if he wanted to get our attention with that name, Gas Bags 101, it reminds me of the story when somebody asked Monty Hall, "How is it that everybody came to Let's Make a Deal in crazy costumes or whatever?" And Monty said the first week of the show, everybody came dressed normally, but then one day a woman came to the show and she had a big sign. Monty said, "I still remember it like it was yesterday. Roses are red, violets are blue. I came here to make a deal with you." And he said, before you know it, everybody brought signs because I picked that lady that first day, and everybody brings signs. And all of a sudden, people started getting dressed up with crazy outfits or whatever, and that's how it began.
yep.
So who knows what Gas Bag 101 is going to start here? Well, maybe Joe, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a whole slew of
Slew of
people,
gas bags,
a whole
yes.
slew of people with crazy names or whatever.
It's time for Briller Jeopardy, and Scott Briller hit the tip jar tonight. Thanks for hitting Super Chat, Mr. Scott. He had flakes in Manala Pan. So here we go. What is the average high and low for the following 5 cities in the month of December? And we're going to start with the city that is
The average
just
high and low.
high and low. And
So,
we're going
so what you're asking, well, what the chairman is asking now, is for us to give two numbers instead
right.
of one.
High and low, 2 numbers. So write your high, put a slash, and then put the next number. So high slash low. All right, high slash low. We will start with the city that is 2 hours south of me, Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay. Well, see, it's too. I mean, it would have been a lot easier just to try to pick out the average or the mean temperature, as opposed to a high and a low. Because usually the high and low are separated by like 16 or 18 degrees, and my mind can't operate so quickly on things like that. I don't know, Joe. Say, how about 60, 65, and 47?
65 and 47 is so far off.
They Bella Lugrisi says 109 slash
All
minus
right,
2.
Anthony actually is pretty close. He's got the high at 56 and the low is 44. Izzy D hit it on the nose, and so did John Melander.
How is that possible that you could
Well,
hit both
I'm not.
numbers?
I'm not going to. I'm going to assume that they're doing these are honest guesses, and not Google guesses. Actually, John Melander was 2 degrees too high. 58.36. It's actually 56.30. 56.38. 56.38. So John Melander. You needed to flip the 8 and the 6. But there you go. Next one is Baltimore.
Baltimore. How about how about how about 50? How about 52.41?
Well, you're closer to these numbers than you were the last numbers, but not close enough.
Oh well.
Um, Craig Carlberg says 49.28. You're close on the high. You're too high on the low. 44.26. Kenneth Rosenberg. You're not too far away from the high. You're too high on the. You're too low on the high. Got to be careful how I say this. I'm also having to look at a whole bunch of numbers. Oh, Frank R is very close. You got the high, Frank, 48, and you're not that far from the low at 34. Maggie P is extremely close, 48.35. So that's close enough. 48.36 is the number for Baltimore. 48.36. All right, let's go next with Boston.
Boston. Boston. Um, how about for Boston? How about 37, 37.25.
You're too low. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're too low.
Oh, well.
John Melander,
Socially?
yes, socially. John Melander, you got the high. Hard for me to follow all these numbers. 42 is the normal high, so you got that. You said 27 for the low, and that's just a little bit too low. Just a little bit too low. Izzy D with the 42.29 is correct. 42.29. And Adam Lowe, your first runner-up at 42.28. So good guesses. Buffalo.
Sorry, Joe.
Buffalo.
I'm in the middle of some kind of an ad, and I can't do anything about it. I have to
That's
wait
all
for this.
right. Just listen to me. Buffalo.
Buffalo. How about for Buffalo 45 29?
Oh, the high, Joe. You're off. You know, if you were the mountain climber on Price is Right, you not only fell off the cliff tonight, you went into the
Well,
abyss.
give me two numbers. My mind is like
I
I
know.
can't two numbers
Buffalo.
here.
Joe Z says 38.20. You're too low on the low. You're close on the high. John Melander 36.22. Very close on the high. A little too low on the low. I feel like oh God, just trying to keep my head straight too with these numbers. 38.25. Izzy D is close. Michael Azara close. 38.25. Frank Scalera 39.27. That's also somewhat close. William Uber 34.25. Fled Weather 36.26. You got the low, Fled 26. The high is 37, so 37.26. And last but not least is Chicago. Chicago.
Oh, I don't know. 47.29.
40 Chicago 47. It's December, Joe, not November. 40. No, it's no. Let's see. 36.26 from actually Tim Latex Dreams, very close. 36.26. Jason Barry 34.29. Need a wider spread. Helen Bertona 39.24. Very close. Very, very close on both of them. 39.28 says Anthony. Close, but the other one was closer. The answer is Frank R. and Izzy D are also very close with 38.25, and so is Patrick Darcy. The answer is actually 38.25 is the answer. Okay, we're out of cities.
And there you go.
And there you go. Anything to add?
No. Well, tomorrow you're going to go solo for about a half an hour.
Yes, so I'll be on it. We'll be on at 7:35 tomorrow, but I'll be doing the first 25 minutes alone because Joe's got a talk to do. So he'll be joining us at 8 o'clock.
Actually, I may be there before 8 o'clock. The talk starts at 6:30. So if I don't have too many questions and answers, I may be pretty close to the time when I'm supposed to be there anyway. So we'll see how that all pans out.
All right. Oh, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Tempest is an affiliate of the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is pinned at the top of the chat board. It's also on the descriptor to this video. Use the coupon code I want a weather station because if you do, you will get
10% off.
And on that note, we will see everybody tomorrow. Have a great night.
Thank you for the 123 likes tonight. And also thank you to Chuck Cardillo, Helen Bertona, Keith James, Scott Briller for once again hitting the Joe and Joe tip jar. And we really do always appreciate that.
And I think, did you get them all? I thought Burner Lady, I think, hit it earlier today. Or maybe I'm wrong.
If she did, I made...
Well, we'll thank her anyway.
All right. Thank you, Burner Lady.
Okay. And we'll see you tomorrow. Night, night.
Nighty night.